Welcome to another virtual Live Talks Los Angeles event. We welcome Senator Elizabeth Warren to our series, and we welcome back Amber Tamblyn. We invite you to visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel for over 300 conversations. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Our handle is Live Talks LA. Senator Warren's new book is Persist. Senator Warren is the senior senator from Massachusetts and a former presidential candidate. She is the author of 11 previous books, including A Fighting Chance and This Fight is Our Fight. She is the mother of two, a grandmother of three, and was formerly a teacher. Amber Tamblyn is an Emmy and Golden Globe Award nominated actress, a writer, a director, and the author of 6 books, including most recently, Era of Ignition, Coming of Age in a Time of Rage and Revolution, for which she appeared at Live Talks Los Angeles, and that video is in our YouTube channel. I am Ted Haptegaber, founder and producer of the series. Welcome to all of you. They will talk, and towards the end, I will pose some of the questions that came from you in the audience. I'll let you take it from here, Amber.
Thank you so much, Ted. Senator, it's my extreme honor to meet you today. I had attempted to stand in one of your selfie lines once when you were running for president, but alas, I had to get home to my 3-year-old as I had limited childcare that week, which is an extremely fitting story to tell you, considering this is so much of a theme of your wonderful book, Persist. There's so much revelatory writing in this book, Senator, from your very personal experiences as a young teacher facing all sorts of gender biases and discrimination, to carrying that same truth into your time as a law professor and even into your bid for the presidency of the United States. In it, you share stories of vulnerability, compassion, hard lessons, and my personal favorite Elizabeth Warren trait, pure fury, is my favorite. True. These stories and insights from your long life as a mother, a fighter, a caretaker, and an educator made me cackle, cover my mouth in horror, and on one occasion, it did leave me crying, sitting on a park bench, because I felt I knew you. I felt I had been you in my own personal way along my own personal journey as a woman. What makes Persist so striking and so vital for this moment we're living in right now are the culmination of these traits put together in you. Traits which have taught women and little girls everywhere that, as you so beautifully put in your book, you don't get what you don't fight for. So thank you for showing us that fighting for what we believe in is a gift we should never abdicate or waste. Thank you for standing up for the little guy while protecting and fighting for the little gal.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you for being a part of this fight. You know, I feel like we're in such a moment in this country. Over this past year, we've endured a pandemic, racial reckoning, and an armed insurrection. We now have a new president. We've passed a huge rescue package. And now we have our toes right on the line to rewrite a big part of opportunity in America going forward. So I think of this as a moment when I talk about why policy matters so much, how it's personal to me in the sense that policies touch, but also in the sense that's what gets me up in the morning and keeps me up at night. And I'm heartened to hear you say it pulls you into the fight too, because that's what the book Persist is intended to do.
Oh, it does it very, very well. I don't want to go through all of it, and I don't want to give away any huge spoilers, but this book to me was the perfect combination of personal story met with a much larger macro narrative about what we need to be doing in the world to show up and to persist, and what persistence looks like in an activated way. In the opening chapters, I think you chronicled your experience as a young new mom, like juggling everything, juggling babies and classes and men's egos. You just juggle all of it. You juggle it so well. You could be like in Cirque du Soleil. And there's this one story that you give, which I can't wait for readers to hear about, which is potty training your child in order to go to work. So will you just tell us a little bit about those experiences and how they shaped your opinion and beliefs around the vital importance of childcare in America?
So here I am. I have been a special ed teacher I got pregnant and got fired. That's another whole story.
Yeah.
I'm now at home with a little one, and I get this crazy idea that I'm going to law school. I mean, like, totally crazy. I don't come from a family of lawyers. My daddy ended up as a janitor. My mom worked the phones at Sears. But I'm just going to go to law school. Now, to go to law school takes a long time because you got to kind of get it all together. But you know me, I am a woman with a plan. So I have my plan. And over time, I do all the things I need to do. Applications and take the exams and figure out how I'm going to pay for it. I go to a state school, Rutgers. I'm living in New Jersey. That's the State University of New Jersey. So I kind of got it all worked off on my list, except for one little thing, and that is childcare. How hard could that be, right? I've never actually looked for childcare because Amelia at this point is just a little one. And so I figured, I'll do this. I give myself a little time. So I've gotten everything checked off the list. We're bearing down. It's about a month until classes are going to start. And I start visiting childcare places with Amelia in tow. She's not yet 2 years old. And we go from place to place. And are you kidding me? They either cost a fortune, they are 80 bazillion miles from our house, they have a waiting list that is years long. I think you would have to sign up for some of these places before you're ever pregnant. Or they smell funny, or something. So I'm just, week by week, I'm thinking, I'm starting to get a little sweaty on this. And then finally, I find the place. A woman is just starting a very small place, and so there's no waiting list yet. Very nice. It's something I can afford. It's not too far from our house. And so I'm filling out the form. And like I said, Amelia is 23 months old at this point. I'm filling out the form, and I'm going through the check, and then it says potty trained. The place will only take children that are dependably potty trained. And I look over at Amelia, who's sitting there in her nice diaper, and I thought, potty trained, check, and turn in the application. At that point, I have about 5 days to potty train a not yet 2-year-old. So all I can say that I'm willing to reveal in public is that I ultimately made it to law school, became a law professor, eventually a United States Senator, thanks to 3 bags of M&Ms and a cooperative toddler. But
keep going. It's a fantastic story. I love it.
But that's the thing about childcare, Amber. I came that close. I mean, that close to not being able to go to law school. And then, as you know, in the book, I tell another story about childcare when I've gotten my first real full-time tenure-track teaching job, where I actually am going to quit because of childcare. So think about this. Back then, I almost got knocked off the track twice. How many women of my generation did get knocked off the track? And what really kills me about this is the same problem existed for my daughter when she had her children, and they were little. And if we don't make some changes, damn it, it's going to be the same problem for my granddaughter. So I see this as one of the critical issues about whether or not, as a nation, as a people, we are serious about opportunity for everyone, including mamas. And yeah, I'll also include daddies, because I know this is an issue for some daddies, but let's face it, it's women who are leaving the workforce following COVID because they can't get childcare, cannot manage. It's women whose careers have been derailed by the lack of childcare. It's women who can't finish their educations. It's women who get trapped in jobs that are not the jobs that they are qualified for and they could do because it was the only way they could work it around childcare. It is time for us to admit as a nation that we build roads and bridges so people can get to work. And that's part of what makes us a productive country. We invest in broadband so people have communications so they can get to work. It is time to treat childcare just like any other form of infrastructure. We want people to be able to get to work, then by golly, let's make the investment in childcare. It's time.
You're here. I completely agree with that. I mean, speaking about women and women caretakers and mothers and all of that, I think one of my favorite parts about the entire book, a theme that runs throughout, is how you powerfully illustrate the importance of interpersonal relationships between women, allyships between women. And you talk a lot about the women in your own life, both past and present, but also the women that shaped you, and also in return, the women that you helped to shape because of that shaping, from your Aunt Bee to your mom. Yeah, exactly. Yep. To Representative Katie Porter, who is a former student of yours. I think a lot of people didn't know that. I certainly didn't know that. And you tell a wonderful story about that in the book. Just truly wonderful. Will you tell us a little bit more about the impact that women have had on your trajectory and why it's important to pass that model down to not only younger generations of women, like you said, but also to bring men into the fold of that understanding?
So I think of it at multiple layers. Women, by doing, show other women what is possible. And then when they reach out a hand and bring them along, that's what makes all the difference in the world. I'll tell you, I tell a lot of stories in the book around this, but just to pick back up on the theme of childcare, the short version of this story is that I did make it through law school, graduated from law school pregnant. Nobody would hire me. So there I am then at home with two babies, Amelia and Alex. I get invited to go back and start teaching part-time in law school at Rutgers, which is where I'd gone. And it's my neighbor who takes care of the baby. Otherwise, I couldn't have done this. I then get a job offer. Jim, my first husband, is moving. He's got to change jobs. So we end up in Houston, and I get a job offer to teach at the University of Houston. And I'm so excited. And there are so few women in teaching at this point. And we get down there, we get a house, we get settled in. I get childcare. I understand that part now. I mean, like, I have not unpacked the boxes and I am setting up. I will never be in that check off the box position again.
Right.
Which was a good thing, because I don't want to tell you how old Alex was before he was potty trained. But it's hard. I'm a first-time teacher. I'm trying to do class preps, and I'm trying to keep the house going. And my first husband's view was, if you want to work, you can, but don't ask me to do this. You know, I'm fine if you want to stay home. I make money, you stay home. So I was kind of on my own to try to get dinner in and all. And so it was kind of a life of I'm serving dinner every night, trying to get it together. It's always late. The kids are cranky. I'm bathing kids, getting them into bed, doing laundry at 11 o'clock and class preps at midnight. It's hard, but I can do hard. The part that nearly broke my back again was childcare. We just cycled through one after another. It's about, you know, the center that closed down in the middle. Oh my gosh. It's about the woman who said she'd take care of her kids and my kids and do it together, and tells me on a Friday not to bring them back on Monday because it's not working out. And it's about the babysitter who just one day doesn't show up, and how fragile it all is. And one night I'm on the phone with my Aunt Bee, who at this point is 78 years old. She is a widow, never had any children. And she asked me how I'm doing. And I say, fine, in this kind of thin, reedy. And then I started to cry. It's like the dam burst. I just thought my heart was going to break. And I just cried and cried and cried. And finally, and she didn't say anything. She didn't try to soothe me. She just held on to the other end of the phone. And then I got a drink of water, came back, and she said, I told her, I'm just failing. I'm failing my children. I can't do this job. And if I can't deal and take care of them. And I get back on the phone and she says, well, she said, I can't get there tomorrow, but I'll come on Thursday. And she arrived at the airport on Thursday with 7 suitcases and a Pekingese named Buddy, and stayed for 16 years. Without it being in my life, I just wouldn't be here today. And a part of what that's about is childcare, but a part of what that's about is Aunt B made today possible for me. And I worked hard as a teacher and also as a senator to create more possibilities for the next generation of women and the next generation. And sometimes it's in very personal ways. I do tell the story about Katie Porter in the book.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's in these big, because I'm here in the Senate and because I get to argue for these things, it's in big building block ways, like childcare, like student loan debt, like elder care, like healthcare, like housing, all the things that we talk about. So to me, that's the best of what we can be. To me, that's what persistence is about. You're in the fight because you're touched, but you're also in the fight because you are going to persist on behalf of others.
I love that so much. And I love that notion of, in my book, An Era of Ignition, I've talked about how it's not just about being the linking of arms, right? But it is reminding yourself who's still behind you and reaching behind to bring forward, which is a great metaphor, just as one would reach forward, hoping someone pulls you forward.
Yep.
And we have to think vertically and horizontally in an existential way. In your book, you talk about how being a teacher is your North Star. You mentioned it's your North Star. So I just wanted to tell you that my mom, Bonnie, who's here watching this, has been a school teacher and a facilitator for 3 decades. And watching her do what she does for others has taught me, I think, pretty much everything that I know about advocacy and inclusion and empathy and communication. So my mom, you're my North Star. And she's actually, she's a huge fan, as I mentioned. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you shared some of the hard lessons that you write about in this book, but, do you want to talk about some of the hard lessons you've had to teach others along the way in your career, and perhaps ways in which that made them better, or things that you had to learn that made you better? Any stories or anecdotes you want to share like that?
I'll tell a story around this that occurs to me as you're talking about, because you have me in mind of being a young teacher. I taught special ed mostly. I had 4 to 6-year-olds mostly. Mm-hmm. And I had known I wanted to be a teacher since 2nd grade. I was totally hooked. Another woman, when Mrs. Lee had whispered to me in 2nd grade that I could be a teacher. And I used to get to hold the reading group, which was the extra reading group for the kids who need a little extra practice reading aloud, and help them sound out words, and I loved it. So here I am. I'm a baby teacher, and I'm at Riverdale Elementary School. And I got a closet for meeting with children because most of my work is one-on-one or one-on-two.
Uh-huh.
And it was a big closet. I mean, I want to be fair here. I don't want to diss anybody. But there was no more room. So they gave me this closet, and I put bright pictures up and low table. I always sat at a very low table so the children felt very, very stable and secure. And for a whole year, we had so much fun. We worked hard, and I push hard, but I mean, we worked on the b sound, and we worked on identifying words. The children I worked with, some of them didn't have any language. I worked with children with hearing problems, and we'd work, but we loved it, and I'd watch them as they just spark. And near the end of that first year, I was pregnant. So I had a plan, and that was, the baby was going to be born in the summer, late summer, and I would come back to school. I'd figure out exactly how to do this. And one day the principal called me in. I hadn't said anything to anybody. The principal called me in, and he just said, "Are you pregnant?" And I said, "Yes." And he fired me. And I remember, and I talk about this in the book, going out to the parking lot and just sitting in the car. And I was just devastated. But I took it. I didn't fight. As a matter of fact, it wasn't illegal at that point.
Right.
And it was pretty standard. And one of the lessons I took away from that, and one of the things I talk about, is I talk about ongoing pregnancy discrimination. Notwithstanding, have things gotten better? You bet they've gotten better than they were. Are they as good as they need to be? No, they are not. And we just have to be open about that. Are there some good companies? Yes. But are women in a good place in terms of being able to work and to have babies? And the answer is no, they're not. And we need to do more. We need to do more as a country. We need to do more as a people. But one of the things I took away from that is that I needed to learn how to fight better, how to fight back, how not to take it anymore. And there's a lot of this in the book, places where I talk about, I'm young, I'm vulnerable, I haven't gotten there yet. And over time, how I do learn to fight. Mm-hmm. And I want that to be a little story that sticks in the next woman's mind, to think about the next time she runs into something that it's not a question of should it happen. It's a question of if it has happened, now what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. I love that. What are you going to do about it? I mean, that's your in the book, you talk about sort of what happened, which I think all of us felt quite robbed of ever knowing what it would be like to have you as a president. That was very difficult for a lot of people. Spoiler alert, you would have been fucking amazing. Sorry, I had to cuss. I had to do it. In your book, you talk about that undertaking, that huge undertaking of running for president, but also running as a woman. Will you tell me a little bit more about what that was like, the decompressing part of that experience? And I think it was towards the beginning of the book, you mentioned, which I really loved, and I want to put it on a t-shirt. You say, "Suck it up and get back to work."
Yeah.
And I think that was nice. And I think that's a really important thing for women to hear, that it's okay to do that. Yeah. It's okay to be really, really angry about something, to express that anger outwardly and vocally, and then to get back to the grind. So will you tell us just a little bit about what happened after that Super Tuesday, how you decompressed, but then tell women when they've, hit this pitfall or a life hurdle, how do you get back up on your feet and get back to work?
So I had been going what felt like 26 hours a day for 14 months. From the moment I declared that I was going to run for president, there were like 185 things all the time to do. And I mean, you could be doing a town hall, and if you weren't doing a town hall, then I had reading I need to do, or the next plan that we're working on. You know, I did a few plans. Always something going on. People to talk to on the phone. We were hiring more people, just lots of activity. And then I lost, and I dropped out of the race. And it's like you've run into something, because there's just you don't have to do something every moment.
Right.
And I lost. I didn't like just kind of not win. No, I actually lost. And I never lost. You know, I as I said in the book, in 2012, I was new to winning. In 2020, I was new to losing, you know.
Yeah. Damn.
And so we live on the corner in this old house, kind of a mixed up neighborhood. If we have apartments across the street and old houses on our side, these brick sidewalks. And people started writing messages on our front sidewalk. People wrote, "Thank you," and "I love you," and "You would have been a good president," and "Our queer family loves you," and children drew rainbows and flowers. And I still remember, I watched this as people start writing on the sidewalk, and I'm mostly inside. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, it's love. Mm-hmm. It's not just politics, it's love. Yeah. And people are sharing the sadness that something is over. It didn't work out at least the way I'd planned, and some of them. And I'm just thinking, there's kind of a moment in that. I'm thinking, I think I may just wallow in this for a while.
Yes.
And the next morning, I get up and there are more things. And I open the door. We live on a corner on the kitchen side. And in giant letters out on the sidewalk, heavily chalked in, 2 feet high, it says, "Persist." And it was like a bucket of cold water in my face.
Yeah.
It did not say wallow. It said persist. And I stood there and I really did. I thought about, now wait a minute, girl. Why were you in this race? And the answer was, I was in this race basically for all those plans that I was talking about, all those ideas, the things that I thought we should do better. And running for president, great way to talk about them. Winning the presidency, great way to make these things happen. I'm in this fight for these things. I'm in this fight for childcare. I'm in this fight to cancel student loan debt. I'm in this fight to get a wealth tax. And I realized, okay, so you didn't win, but the fight is still out there. So what is it that's really important to you? And the answer is that fight, that part to carry it forward. I'm going to be fine. But there are still a lot of women out there looking for childcare, or a lot of women who aren't looking yet, but will be someday. Or a lot of women who just remember what it was like. Women who have faced all kinds of things in the workplace, in their families, who've picked it up. And I thought, damn, in the same way they suck it up, that's exactly what I can do as well. And that was it. Next day, back in the fight.
I love that you even had a plan for how to wallow, like what your wallowing was going to look like. And
I knew what my wallowing
look like.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a huge, the art of the Warren plan. That's like a major theme in your life and in your book. In fact, you actually, in a meta way, you talk about how to plan making a plan.
Yep.
It's so thorough. I love it so much. Speaking
Mhm.
of that, can you tell us maybe, I'm very personally curious to know exactly how a plan in your life, in your work as a senator, comes to fruition with you and your team. I personally imagine you like seated in a war room, flanked by tough, brilliant women researchers and statisticians and economists all drinking beers, hatching ideas, and throwing darts at a board with Michael Bloomberg's face on it. That's what I would hope for. But so my question is twofold. One, tell us exactly, maybe a little bit more in detail about how exactly you come to a plan. Who are you sitting with? Do you sit around a table? What does that look like? And then two, if that is true, what I just said about a bunch of women sitting in a room, can I come sometime and hang out and just be a fly on the wall?
Answer to part two, of course you can. You're welcome
Okay,
anytime.
thank you. Thank you.
Part one is it always starts with what's wrong. Plans don't start by themselves. They start because you're trying to fix something. So I've used the example of childcare, but there are lots of other examples in here. For example, how little we invest in our children's education, how tough it is for people who are struggling with student loan debt, and what it's doing, not just to them individually, but what it's doing to our economy overall. Always remember, I spent decades as a professor on the hollowing out of America's middle class and why it is that hardworking people were going broke in America. And so this has been a big part of what I've worked on. So it starts with what is the problem that we're trying to fix? And the problem, I'll be blunt, it can come from anywhere. Some of it comes from the things I've lived. Some of it comes from the things people on my team have lived. Some of it comes because somebody just pitches one in and talks to me or talks to somebody else on the team. But they come from lots of places. And let me just start by saying, that's why it's so important to have diverse groups. If you, let me just draw the extreme, because I do talk about money in politics in this.
Yes, you do.
If I spent all of my time with millionaires and billionaires and corporate executives to try to get them to finance my campaign, think how it would influence me. Yeah, it would influence me in the sense that if I'm going to spend all that time with those people, I'm not going to turn around and embrace legislation that they don't like. So it has that kind of influence, but it has another kind of influence. If that's where all your time gets sucked up, you don't hear about the other problems. Scheduling. You know what? Most billionaires and corporate CEOs, they don't have a scheduling problem. They show up in the morning when they want to show up in the morning, right? They show up early if that's what works for them. Show up late if that's what works for them. Do you know how many people in America, mostly low-wage workers, don't get their work schedules until just a few days before, sometimes just the day before, and that they are told that condition of this job at Walmart is you have to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not that they're going to make you work all that time or pay you for all that time. But if they want to have you come in this week, Tuesday from noon to 9, then you have to be ready to do that. And if next week it's going to be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and 2 of those days are going to be at 8 in the morning, and one of those you don't start until 4 in the afternoon, that works really well for the employer who's matching a unit of work to whatever they think the demand is. But it is a bone crusher for a parent who's got to figure out who's going to pick up the kids after school, for somebody who's trying to do better and get the next job and get some more education or some technical training. How do you do that if you have to be available to work all the time? So I use that as an example. You spend all your time with billionaires, you don't hear about the scheduling problem. I started hearing about the scheduling problem when I first came to the Senate, and I would meet with big groups of workers, including a lot of Walmart workers. And they started talking about schedules, and together We identified the problem, and then you start to talk about what would work, what would work. And that's then when we get into I'm going to describe it as the metaphor of the room you've described,
Okay.
because it is a very back and forth process. I'll say, how about if we do this thing? And then I am blessed to have people who look at me and will say things like, no, that's not going to work. Or people who will say to me, Senator, data, this is what this thing shows, not that. It's over here. And so we got to aim it in this direction. They tried that in France. And here were the ways it worked, and here were the ways it didn't. We have so many good people now on our team who come at this from different points of view. So when I said a minute ago, in doing plans, diversity really matters. Diversity of background, gender, race, economic circumstances, how you're living now, because all of that helps us better understand the problems and the possible range of solutions. And at any given time, it's not just one. Oh, Amber, this is the fun part. It's you got multiple pieces going and different people.
I wish I had some
working on
popcorn
different
right now.
parts.
I just wish I was eating popcorn.
So much fun. It truly is. It is enormous fun. And I was always so blessed as a teacher. I just had great students. And this is true when I had little tiny ones, and this is true when I had tall ones and taught them in law school. But it is also very true now that there are so many people now who want to go into public service. And I've just really been lucky to have people who have skills. They're data crunchers, or they know huge amounts about our trade policy with China or whatever it is. They have some expertise, but they're open-minded and curious. And we call it entrepreneurial, but it's idea entrepreneurship. It's I have no idea for what we could do here. And okay, let's run with it. Let's hear what's the idea. You know, I talk about this in the book, 81 plans that we put out. 81.
Wow.
Juicy, glorious, bold plans. And the whole act of putting these plans out, it's not only blueprints for the future, it's exploring problems in ways that as a nation, sometimes we had not identified, and sometimes we had not been willing to be honest about. Taxes. Nobody wants to talk about taxes, never talk about raising taxes. No. There are a lot of folks who want to talk about taxes, like the folks who understand that it's not right for rich people to pay at tax rates that are half that of middle-class families and working families. So anyway, I love the whole process, as you can tell. So when told to persist, it was about prioritizing what really matters. And what mattered to me was those plans, getting those ideas out there, fighting for them. And all the people who'd come in to help on the presidential, wasn't about me. It's about the things we want to fight for together. And here's the best part, we're still fighting for them.
Amen to that. I was such an admirer of your, and still am, of the wealth tax plan. And you know, one of the amazing things you did in the book is you somehow managed to humanize politicians. And you talked a lot about what an honor it is to be able to share part of your plan with someone else, especially if you're no longer in a race and then someone calls you and goes, hey, I love this thing you came up with. Can I take some of that? And I never knew that. I never knew that that was a good thing to do. I thought everyone hated each other for stealing plans. So that was quite illuminating. And I think when I heard, you know, President Biden the other night, and I heard him talk about what he was going to be doing as far as taxing, doing income tax and capital gains taxes on the richest people in our country. And I thought, oh, there's a little wealth tax in there, a little bit of Elizabeth Warren jam. So that was good. That was great to see that.
You know, and it really was one of the best parts of running. Julian Castro, for example, he was bold. He had good plans.
Yes, he did.
And so when Julian was no longer in the race, I called and asked how he would feel about this. And here's the thing, I talk about this in the book. When I dropped out of the race, Joe Biden called me and said, not just the, I'm sorry you dropped out of the, I'm talking about called me just out of the blue a few days later and said, I really like your bankruptcy plan. Would you be okay if I adopted that? And it's like, okay.
It's like asking you out on a date. It's like asking you out on a first date.
It is.
Like, really like your smile.
That's right. But you know, that's how it should be. And this is what aggravates me.
Agreed.
When people run for office and don't talk about plans, you're not moving the thing forward.
Yeah.
You may make it all about yourself, but you're not moving our national conversation forward. And not just conversation, you got to plow this ground to make change. And you got to get people engaged with it and talking about it. You know, the guy I talk about in the book in Minnesota, do you remember that story?
Yes.
So we've done this like 85-hour selfie line. We've had a wonderful time. And this guy comes through and says that in effect, I'm so glad you're out there doing what you're doing. And he said he was running for office locally for the second time. And he said when he ran the first time, he wanted to talk about his plans, what he wanted to change in city government. And he said, but he was told, nobody talks about plans. You know, you make a few general statements, and then you talk about the Vikings.
Right.
And he had lost. And he said, but now, he said, I get out there and talk about my plans. And he said, and when somebody tells me nobody talks about plans, I say, hey, Elizabeth Warren talks about plans, and if she can do it, I can do it. And he said, it's the most fun part of doing this. And, you know, I wish I'd gotten the guy's name. I don't know if he ultimately won or lost, but I'll tell you this. The very act of running, the fact of launching that campaign and fighting for some important ideas, I guarantee good came out of that, because you don't get what you don't fight for. And putting those plans out, writing a book about those plans and the stories and trying to bring more people in, that's what I'm fighting for.
Here. Well, I know we're running out of time, so I just have one more question, and
Sure.
that is, may I please finally have a selfie with you?
You bet. Let's do one. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm gonna open this up. All right, I'm gonna take one on my end.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
1, 2, 3. Awesome. Senator, this is such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure to talk to you today, and I cannot tell everyone enough. Please go get this book. It's available on audiobook and everywhere where books are sold, obviously. And it is just a really wonderful, important read right now that will get a fire going underneath you and make you feel like Persist is the word of 2021 and something for us all to live by this year and going forward.
Oh, thank you, Amber. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for being part of this fight. And this truly is. This is a book from my heart to yours.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Great to have you back at Live Talks Los Angeles. We have a bunch of audience questions, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. First, what will it take to see more compromise in Congress? It seems that compromise is thought of as a weakness, and it has been reduced to one side winning and another side losing.
I think it's going to take more engagement from the outside. Let me put it this way. We often talk about bipartisan measures, and what that means is how many Republican votes in Congress did you pick up? The truth is, that's not really what bipartisan means. What bipartisan means is it's something that Democrats and Republicans and independents embrace. So, for example, investing in childcare or a wealth tax, canceling student loan debt. These are things that people across the political spectrum, changes that they want to see us make as a nation. And I think the only way you get folks in Washington, and look, I'm just going to be blunt about this, on the Republican side, who don't want to come to the table to talk about more taxes, or don't want to come to the table to talk about childcare or student loan debt. I think the only way that we change that is enough people who aren't in Congress make their voices heard and make them heard loud.
With the election of Joe Biden, I feel some on the progressive left want a more ambitious agenda, and some in the middle feel a more centrist plan is going to get bills passed. How do we better manage the expectations of both in order to advance better policy and legislation?
It's a good question. I think the answer is, don't do this in the abstract. Let's not make this all about what is it called. Let's make it about what is needed. The nearly $2 trillion rescue package was big. It didn't have everything I wanted. And in fact, there was some stuff in it I wasn't too crazy about. But that was true for everybody else who voted in favor of it. So I see this as, when we get down to the specifics, I think we start to really hammer that problem out. Because the big shift, as I see it right now in this moment, is that across America, we recognize we need a government that's on the side of the people. We can't just have a government that's there for the trillionaires and billionaires. We need a government not only that's willing and able to respond in a pandemic, but we need one that can help rebuild our roads and bridges because they are in perilous state. We need a government that can make sure that women have access to childcare, that everyone has access to healthcare. We need a government that will protect our democracy and our right to vote. So these are the issues that are right in front of us. And I think we start with the majority, certainly not 100%, not even close, but a majority of the American people saying, yeah, that's right. So the rest of us in Congress, it's up to us to deliver on that. And, in a sense, that's what the book Persist is about. It's about the next 100 days, how we're going to deliver the kind of change that not only does America need, in my view, I think the evidence, it's the change America wants.
Next question. Both among elected persons and citizens at large who pay attention to the issues, I don't feel we listen to each other well enough. I feel, and I'm just as guilty of this, we know how to respond before even fully understanding the opposing position. Any pointers from your teaching days that might help with this?
Boy, that is a good point. And one of the things you have to learn to do as a teacher, but I think also as a citizen, is don't start answering before the person gets to ask the question. And to think about how much you can learn if you just pause and listen. I think it's also a reminder, and I talk about this a little in the book, it's about respect. I genuinely do, to listen to people that I don't agree with, because the listening itself is respectful. So when I believe that these are sincerely held beliefs, I try hard to listen. You have to be, and this comes from my days teaching special ed. If you're impatient, and it's funny for somebody like me to be saying this, if you're impatient, you can't connect. We both have to be able to be part of the process, whether it's a conversation, it's the learning. And so you just have to kind of learn to quiet and center yourself, I think, in conversations with others. I hope that's helpful. I hope.
What do you think Senator Josh Hawley is accomplishing by voting against practically everything?
I presume he thinks somehow that's to his political benefit, but I don't get it. Look, I got off that train with an armed insurrection. I'm done.
I feel some on the right would like us to forget what happened on January 6th. It was such a violation of our country and democracy. I cannot believe it happened, and I will never forget. And I don't think any of us should. Will there be a full 9/11 type commission to get into what happened?
I don't know. I believe there should be, but I truly do not know. Right now, there is great resistance on the Republican side of the House to putting a 9/11 type commission, an independent commission in place. But we'll keep pushing.
What is the most important message for you to give someone in Massachusetts who did not vote for you or did not vote for Joe Biden?
That the things I'm fighting for matter, that they touch your life. And I want to hear from you. I want to get this right, but I'm not going to stop. There's too much need. And this is a moment when we can make real change as a nation. So I'm in this fight. Help me fight it. Help me fight it better. But I'm in it. I'm in it all the way.
Two final questions. One of your colleagues in the Senate feels that since we elected an African-American president twice and just elected an African-American part Indian vice president, there is no racism in America. There obviously is. So how do we educate such people to be more understanding of what they might not see?
We have a structural problem in America. Can I give you just one? Let me just give you one example around this. And that is homeownership. Number one way in America to build wealth for just middle-class families is homeownership. You buy a home, over time it appreciates, you get it paid off, and if everybody's lucky, grandma and grandpa can live in it until they pass on, and they'll pass that wealth to the next generation. This has been going on in America literally for over 100 years of wealth building and generational transfers where each generation kind of lifts up the next. It works. And so it wouldn't be surprising for you to hear that back in the 1930s, that the federal government actually stepped up and said, we're going to subsidize this. We're going to help make this happen more for white people, but not for Black people. And so the federal government said, lots of subsidies for mortgages, but we're going to take a big red crayon and we're going to draw around communities of color and say, no lending, no help inside there. And what happens over time? People go out, they work, they have jobs, but home ownership rates, among whites, subsidized home ownership rates just keep going up more and more, and they're climbing for African Americans, but not nearly fast enough. And then that has all kinds of implications in the differential in wealth, in educational opportunities, in occupational opportunities, all kinds. So 1965, Jim Crow laws are basically repealed, right? Civil rights laws are passed. And all of a sudden, redlining goes away, and that's the end of it. But remember, by the 1960s, there was already this huge gap. Now, over time, African Americans in particular, they've been moving up, but so has the wealth of white families. And so the gap today, for example, in home ownership that difference is as big as it was back in the early 1960s when housing discrimination was still legal. Now, you can search the law books. You will not find anything that says that mortgage lenders can discriminate based on race. Indeed, they cannot. And yet, look at what racism does. Look at what structural racism is all about. I picked housing. You could watch the same kind of effects in education, in healthcare. One of the things I talk about in the book, I have a chapter in the book that talks about race, and that I try to dig into is that we have to be willing as a people to confront racism head on. Pretending it's not there, pretending everybody has the same chance to buy a home when there's that kind of difference structurally, we're not going to become the nation we want to become. I think Dr. Kendi, Ibram Kendi says it best when he says it's not enough not to be racist. We got to be anti-racist, which means we've actually got to confront the racism head on. That means calling it out. Oh, and as Amber and I talk about, building plans that directly account for racial differences and then carrying through on that. Oh, and you'll be surprised to hear this. I do have plans. All of my plans, I try to back up and look at the racial implications, how we got the problem, and how we build solutions that are truly anti-racist.
Thank you. And our final question, Senator Warren, do you have any regrets? If there's one thing you could do over again, what might that be?
You know, I'm trying to think back. Yeah, some of the regrets, look, I'm divorced. If you're divorced, you probably have some regrets. My first marriage was hard, but I also have two wonderful children from that marriage, and now 3 grandchildren. And I have a wonderful husband now. So it's hard to have regrets when you stay focused on your blessings. It's kind of where Amber and I were talking about this conversation to begin with. You can lose and spend all your time focusing on, oh, I lost and I wish it had gone the other way. Or you can just say, what was the part you were in this for? What was the part that spoke to your heart? What was the part that got you up in the morning and kept you up at night? Use that part. Persist.
Thank you, Senator Warren, and thank you, Amber, and thanks to all of you for joining us. Again, Senator Warren's book is Persist, and it is available wherever books are sold, and a limited number of signed copies can be purchased in the link below. Thanks, and as we like to say around here, go on gently.